Welcome to Nerdarchy. Dave here, for Nerds by Nerds, with my esteemed colleague Ted,
How you doing?
and our special guest today, Kerry. And today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons classes, the Cleric. So, what about him?
As you well know, you've run most of our games. I'm a big fan of the Cleric. I think they offer quite a lot of advantages, just from the fact that they have decent martial capabilities. They have decent hit points, but the biggest standpoint the biggest point that I see is the plethora of god choices. Regardless of what setting you're in, you always have lots of choices, and the flavor of that god can point you down so many different roads. Good, evil, war, peace.
Well, that's a good point, because for the Cleric, especially in early editions, first edition, second edition, that was the only defining factor that you had was your deity. I mean, after second edition and when the options started coming out, and later splat books for 2E and then 3.5, then you started really getting more, you could really flush out the character a lot more. Fourth edition did some things, but fourth edition had its own problems with everything feeling kind of the same. But now, come fifth edition, and if we look back at 3, we could really flesh out those characters and make them their own, and they felt different. The biggest problem I felt in early editions of the game was they always felt the same, other than the god you worshipped. But all your trappings, if you were a cleric of the god of death or the god of magic, you still fought with blunt weapons and wore armor, so it didn't really look any different.
Right. So I know, Kerry, you said that cleric is one of your favorite classes. Why do you make that choice? Why do you think cleric is the go-to?
I like it because it's the backbone that keeps the party alive. You're going to get into fights, you're going to fight monsters, you're going to fight bad guys, you're going to fall down pits, and somebody needs to put the party together. I actually hate choosing the god when I play a cleric.
Really?
I really want to work on the personality of my character and what's driving and motivating my character. And when I get wrapped up in what the books say about, oh, this god likes this and hates this and does that, I feel limited. I want to work on a character. What's my personality? What's my motivation? And I've got a connection to a deity, but I always feel like that's secondary to the personality of the character that I want to create.
So you don't ever go down the path of being the one that gets up on the soapbox.
No.
I've as I said, I've done loads of clerics over my many years of gaming, and I've done the cleric that gets up and proselytizes his god and tries to get converts. But those kind of get droll over the course of many years of gaming. But having things where your actions kind of speak for the god, I think they wind up gearing you towards what you want. But I always pick a direction of what I think my character would want to do, and pick a god that's going to fit that. If you want to make a battle cleric, well, then let's pick a god of war. If you want to make a someone who's not interested in actually fighting, that wants to just try and stop the fighting, then go for a god of peace. And having those choices, it gives you almost a spoon-fed role-playing tool.
It's a great tool, especially for people that are just getting started with role-playing. When you've got those guidelines of, hey, here's a way to focus, here's a way to get started. This will give you some things to play with that maybe you hadn't thought about before. But if you've been gaming for 20-something years, then to me it's almost limiting. I want to start with a personality. Am I an outgoing person? Am I a shy person? Do I have a goal? Am I on a crusade? And then, I'll flip through the book and see what gods might fit into that.
Well, going along with what you're saying, one of the interesting things that just happened recently in one of our games, or almost happened in our games if our cleric would have showed up. In 5th edition, they introduced this idea that you may not have picked your god. Your god may have picked you. You're going through your life doing your thing, and all of a sudden,
the divine beam just... You're a cleric.
You're a cleric.
Oh, that's brilliant. I love it.
And so our cleric's oh, that's a great idea. I'm from a noble house. It's kind of like a jumped up merchant. in elven society, and I just really want to increase the influence of my house and do right by my parents and my lineage. And then all of a sudden, bam, I'm a cleric.
I'm a cleric. I'm having dreams. I'm having these visions.
Yeah.
I've got this voice in my head that's just driving me in this direction.
I want to heal things. I don't understand. So it's that's interesting, and it goes along with what you're saying is you're defining the character, and then the god is secondary, and that's exactly what he did. Like you had to go, hey, what's more important, your house or your god? And he's like,
he had to really think about it.
He's like, I don't know. I don't think either.
And with 5th edition, I mean, the player's handbook literally, just became available just the other day. And it's technically not due out until the 19th. So it's not like there was a plethora of choices. So it's like, well, let's just come up with some concepts that he can work with, and we can just, go with it from there. He wasn't really concerned with who the god was, just the direction why his character would have been chosen.
Mm-hmm.
And worth mentioning, since we're talking about clerics and we're mentioning different editions, in 5th edition, one of the things that we always did in 2nd edition, you had the oh shit button as the cleric. You're like, you can throw the Hail Mary and be like, I worship you, and you do stuff for me sometimes. How about right now?
Please send a miracle.
Well, at 10th level, it's built into the mechanics where you have a chance of divine intervention. Mm-hmm. At 20th level, it's automatic. Like, you can't do it all the time, but you definitely can go, yeah, it looks really bad right now. Can you do something about this?
You might be out of spells, and your friend is dying.
Right.
Help him up. Or there is just way too many guys coming at me. Help
Get
me
us out of
here.
here.
Can you do that seed thing and wash them away? Something. Throw some horses in there.
So
cool.
I know we usually talk about when we're doing the classes about the different editions, but here we have a unique opportunity to talk about your other cleric that I first met you as. So
wait a minute. You met her as a cleric?
I met her as a cleric.
It's true. And
spell slinging and
he was
everything.
a rogue. In fact, I think I threw a ranger. I think I threw a beanbag at him.
Wow, I had something like this happen once, but I think there was illegal substances involved. But okay, so tell me about this.
All right, so we met at a LARP a long, long time ago at this point, and
Galaxy far, far away.
Yes, in a galaxy
so
far, far away in Medford, New Jersey. So
well, it was a little strange in Medford. I worked there for a few years.
Out in the pines, and we would get dressed up in our costumes, and we would have foam swords and beanbags for spells, and off we'd go to save the common folk from whatever terror happened to be passing through the woods that week. So that was a lot of fun.
So do you feel that there's any difference in tabletopping a cleric versus LARPing a cleric? Beyond the obvious of actually donning the costume and having a much harder time of stepping out of character?
Well, with the LARPing, it was a what you see is what you get system. So if I threw a beanbag at you and it hit, congratulations, you're healed. But you can't call down lightning in a LARP. You can't see the lightning. It doesn't exist. In a tabletop game, your imagination is the limit. So you can call in a spectral horse and ride off on it. You can't do that in a LARP. So
what about the actual role-playing aspect of it? Do you feel that there's any difference in between the two?
I still see it as a backbone character to a group. You would never have a group in a LARP head off down a trail without somebody to heal them. You really don't want to send your adventurers in a tabletop game into a dungeon without some way of getting healed.
Hey, that's not my fault. You gotta blame the cleric that didn't show up.
It's a role that's needed, and I like that feeling of being needed. And a lot of people look at the cleric as, oh yeah, they're the pocket healer. They're just there, just in case things go wrong. But it's really somebody that you can't do without. And it's kind of fun to sit in the background a little bit and then step in and save the day.
No, as a cleric, favored person, do you feel that the cleric is one of those that just gets pushed to the side in the role playing scenes, or are you the type of cleric that tends to step up into the spotlight and actually fulfills the leadership role, during the town sequences.
Social interactions.
Yeah.
Well, it depends. I think it depends on the player. Because
Well,
my cleric
you're the
was a
player.
gypsy. My cleric was a gypsy. She wanted to be out front and center, and her goal was to have a good time. And very similar to what you were talking about before, her god chose her in that role-playing world. A gypsy choosing to be a cleric of the goddess of nature is not necessarily a logical jump.
Okay.
But living out on the trail, out on the road all the time, it seemed to fit to connect with.
No,
with
no.
what
What
you're
about
around.
what about in the paper and dice version? When you play a cleric, do you tend to step up and guide the party, or you just kind of slink back, and when somebody needs help, you step to?
It's funny. It's the same thing but completely different. My
the same,
gypsy
but
character. It's the
completely
same
different.
thing but completely different. My gypsy character was always, front and center. Look at me. I'm dancing. I'm singing. I'm getting everybody's attention. But as soon as things started to get ugly, I would drop to the back and let everybody else get hurt. Because if I'm the one who's dead, I can't save them.
That's right.
So usually when I play a tabletop cleric, I hang back a little bit.
Okay.
I'm not out front. It's harder to be that flamboyant character sitting around a table, I think.
Okay.
So
Dave and I are usually the ones who wind up DMing for our group, and we both have somewhat strong personalities around the table. So since one of us is usually DMing, regardless of what character choice we wind up having, our actual personalities tend to force people, or by chance have people just slink back and let one of us lead. We have to willingly choose to say, you know what, I'm gonna let somebody else take the front on this one. And even then, I've played characters that have no point being the leader. I had a character who had mental stats of junk, charisma of 6, and everyone did what he said.
There's Ted's character. Here's a rock. The rock is certainly slightly more personable.
I think it was like 876 for intelligence, wisdom, charisma, and people did what I said.
that's rough.
Because that's just what happened. Nobody was willing to step up and take command of the group, and he was a brutish bully fighter, and they just do what I say. Okay. But when I do the cleric, I absolutely want to be the front runner. I want to be the one who's standing up there and engaging. As the game says, it's a role-playing game, so I am always into the actual role-playing aspect of it. I had our first actual campaign with our group. I had a cleric of the god of light. He was our bastion of goodness. And for a second edition game, we had gotten to a whopping 9th level. It was super huge for our group. And I'm standing there, talking to the masses. And with second edition, you had odd magic items, and he had magical robes that one of its properties was they could not be sullied, couldn't be dirtied. Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting there proclaiming, this almost title of my god, because there wasn't power levels in this world that matched what we had. And somebody scooped up a thing of mud and threw it at me. And as mud does, it slid down my robes. But as it slid, it didn't leave a mark. And as silly as that was sounding, something like that wound up changing the whole scene for the populace. Mm-hmm. So things like that are just, pinnacle examples of, what a cleric does. I feel it's like it just adds so much more that if you were just hey, I'm a fighter and I swing a sword, you just don't get. You can make a speech, but if you don't have that divine or magic might to go behind it, doesn't mean as much. What do you guys think?
Well, I haven't actually played that many clerics. The longest running cleric that I played was actually in one of the very few games that we got to play together in, and it was an evil campaign. And, it was a crazy dwarf that worshipped chaos, and who really, his only goal was to just have shit hit the fan. And to that end, he kept just prodding his character, trying to convince him to be a conqueror.
I started off the character with just the goal of being a general. And the DM we had at the time, he has this crutch. If he doesn't care about your character, that's the best.
That's the sweet spot.
That's the sweet spot.
The worst was if you liked your character or hated your character.
If he loved you or hated you, you
was
were
bad.
doomed. And I presented, it was just a fighter, and I presented the goal of I wanted to be a general of an army, I want to serve some king, and I want to be able to command the masses of military might. And he totally throws me under the bus and says, nope, we're going to make you king. And he's prodding me, and this guy's prodding me.
Yeah, I kept whispering in his ear that the king is actually the one that actually runs the armies. And
like we wind up, we take over a castle that really was so bizarrely put together. There was one powerful spellcaster, and that was basically it for the castle. There wasn't people all over the place. There wasn't an army that we had to fight through. It was rather silly.
Well, our DM was rather bizarrely put together at that time.
I think also in this castle was a well that led to a sphere of annihilation.
Second edition. There's some things I'll never miss about second edition. Like finding plenty of room in the sphere of annihilation.
Yeah. Thank you, Tomb of Horrors.
And Gary Gygax. May you rest in peace.
Aw. My favorite cleric was actually a combination of a necromancer and a cleric of a death god.
Okay.
And the campaign was brilliant.
Now, was it a good campaign, an evil campaign?
It was a good campaign.
Okay.
Actually, it was a very, very ironic role. It was a good campaign, and
Were you
I was
a good necromancer?
I was a
good necromancer.
No, I was actually a good necromancer, and this is why I like coming up with strange character concepts and playing those and using the god as a secondary role. The concept was we had an evil empire, and it was a Pathfinder game. We had an evil empire, and the rulers of the land used these basically death squad necromancers to control people. If a village got out of hand, they would send the necromancers out to basically reassign the village to teach everybody a lesson.
Lovely.
So my character grew up, born in the capital, raised as one of these death squad necromancers, and they sent me out to reassign a village, a whole village, innocent people, women, children, just wipe them out. And my character said no. And so I defected, and then I was on the run from this evil empire.
Nice.
And teamed up with a group of rebels that were trying to work to bring this down. It was a great game. And they were all good characters. There was a paladin in the group, and here I am, a necromancer, and the dynamic between all of the different characters was really amazing because my skills were raising the dead. That was what I did.
Right.
And whenever we got into a situation, there would usually be dead bodies. If we were doing our jobs properly, we'd be taking people out. And that was my tool. That was my resource, was I would use this dead body, which is completely useless, to raise it up and fight for the cause of good. And the dynamic between all of the characters in there was just so much fun to play. And that wasn't just hanging back. That was something where I really got to be in the forefront of, I've got a cause. I'm fighting for a cause.
So now, out of game, the person playing that paladin, were you guys close friends, loose acquaintances?
It was my husband.
So that's got to have been some, really great back and forth role playing. As a paladin, he's not going to outright slay you.
Right.
He's got the ability to see that you're good, but your methods are
questionable.
Completely incompatible.
Not even questionable. I mean, to him, it's got to be tapping into a power that is just so wrong and vile.
Yeah.
But yet you're doing something for his cause. So how much back and forth was it on a session by session? Were there sessions where he really had to? I don't want to look at this anymore.
Yeah, no, we ended up coming to an agreement that we were going to agree to disagree, and I was going to try not to do it in his face. So, but it was fun. I was a lot of fun role playing and very challenging.
I would have loved.
So when you guys had like a tiff, it'd be like zombie.
Yeah.
No, skeleton.
Yeah. Yeah, and they would follow me around, and then he would have to have funerals for them when we were done. Once the scene was over, he'd have to put them to rest and give the paladin blessings to send them on their way. So
that's awesome.
Well,
it was a lot of fun.
In 5th edition, they've got some really cool necromancy stuff. Like Finger of Death is now my new favorite spell, because if you kill something with Finger of Death, it is then animated as a zombie under your control.
Automatically, just you kill it, whoop, it stands right back up.
I just want that spell. I want to run around the forest killing bunny rabbits. My legion of zombie bunnies.
Squirrels worship me.
I only got to flip through the spell section of the book, so I don't know exactly what spell it is, but. With the later editions, they've turned the negative energy into now necrotic damage. But one of the 5e spells, it does however much necrotic damage. But in addition to that, the maximum hit points of that character are reduced by that damage. So if you take 14 necrotic damage from this spell, your maximum hit points are reduced by 14 until you've had some kind of restoration effect applied. And those things can be cumulative. And so if you just keep getting slapped with something like that, it can be disastrous. It's not all that, fun when you're just tagging NPCs with it. But if you've got a reoccurring villain that you hit with it, that can be, detrimental. But, as a DM tool, hitting a player with that can be, pretty harsh.
I hate when that happens. But you also have a new one of your new favorite spells from 5th edition you were telling me about.
Which one was
Revivify.
Oh.
For two reasons. First of all, tell us why you like it.
All right, for two reasons. The first and foremost, again, as a cleric, there's a lot that you can do with 5e. But Revivify is a spell that allows you to return someone who's died.
No. Tell me why you like the word.
Oh,
the
okay.
name.
All right. Well, I'll get back to the rules part in a second. I'm an avid reader. As is our everybody here, and here's some of Kerry's library. But the first time I came across the word Revivify was in a book by Stephen Brust in his Talto series. And I had never heard of it before. I thought it was the most ridiculous word to talk about resurrecting. And I assumed he had made it up because everybody knows resurrection. Everybody knows raise dead. And then it was just a point of, okay, well, let's, we've got the word revive. Let's see if we can fiddle with that. And it was a way of just bringing someone back to life. So it was like, okay, here we've got a spell that's based off of a spell in a book series that I read that I'd never heard of before. So I thought that was kind of cool. So there's a shout out for any of you Stephen Brust fans. But then the actual mechanics portion of it, the spell lets you bring someone back to life who's been dead for an hour or less, but it's a 3rd level spell. As a 5th level cleric, you can start bringing people back to life.
As long as they're fresh.
As long as they're fresh. Now, yes, you enter into the conundrum of, do you have the spell prepared or not? But having access to something like that at so early a level, as a cleric fan, it's probably 50% of my characters have had cleric abilities.
I think the verbal for that spell should be that don't go towards the light. Don't go towards the light. Come back.
And it just is like, all right, how many times have we seen characters kick the bucket? And our group especially, we don't get the power levels. We don't get up to those kind of things. I mean, I've had one character ever bring someone back to life, and that's because he was a 9th level druid.
And reincarnate.
He had reincarnate.
Our group has severe RPG ADD. So our campaigns just don't last very long, The DM gets bored, our players wander off, all kinds of crazy stuff.
Life happens, and we just have a short hiatus. So actually having a resurrection spell or resurrection-like spell at so early a level is a game changer.
And we almost needed it last night.
That's what happens when you don't have a cleric. But if you don't have a cleric, you wouldn't have it.
Yeah, it's true. It wouldn't have done us any good.
So which I know you haven't gotten into the 5e stuff, and
Not yet.
you might just stay towards Pathfinder. But as a fan of clerics, having access to a third level raise spell, what's your opinions on that?
It's useful, but the types of campaigns that I run, I usually don't find myself in actual instances where you're probably going to be in complete dire peril at that level.
Okay, so you
but I guess
got DMs that are a little bit more soft.
Yeah, I guess it depends on your play style. If you know that the game probably isn't going to last past 7th or 8th level, you're going to jump into more hardcore stuff sooner because you want to get there before you lose your players.
Right.
But if you have a game that's been going on for 4 or 5 years, which is what I tend to jump into, then we don't get into those situations till much later anyway. Or maybe we just didn't put ourselves in those situations because we knew we didn't have the resurrection spells yet. So you could almost say, well, is it a chicken or an egg scenario?
Better part of valor, better part of valor.
Yeah. Unfortunately, a lot of times my players don't like to run away, and they expect everything to kind of just be, geared towards the story towards them, where I've always built my game a little more organically and interactive world where you can encounter things that you're not ready for, and you should probably either talk your way out of it or beat feet or do whatever you got to do. Especially coming from that first edition mentality, second edition, it was, you did a random encounter, and well, it's random. Anything can happen, You're
third level, but that's a 14th level monster.
Yeah, you should probably not. Yeah, don't hang around there. It's bad.
Our group has learned the hard way, the very, very hard way. We've had multiple, TPKs. The campaign's over because all of you are dead. You failed every single, Here's a hint. You don't want to do this. Here's another hint. You really don't want to do this.
Beyond sign.
And of course, there are the times where the DM has gotten overzealous or heavy-handed. I didn't realize this was this powerful when I created it, or the dice just completely go total against the party. And we've had a number of campaigns that have ended completely because there isn't enough party to continue. We ended one campaign with my character being the lone survivor, grabbing his pack and, beating it back to town to hopefully survive his general, not killing him because he failed in his mission. We've had another campaign that ended with the lone survivor was because he was stuck in CPS Snake Sigil. Which is a throwback to second edition. I don't know whether it ever made it to any of the later editions, but he was trapped for 9 days, and I think there was one other character who started exploring on his own, and he died from an imp or a quasit, poison attack, and it's just crazy, some of the stuff that we've wound up encountering.
Never separate from the party.
No, that's a bad idea. It's like in a horror movie. The one person goes off on their own and, they're dead. Imagine that. How did that happen?
They were smart. That's why they can play for 4 to 5 years in the same campaign, is because they don't wander off. And ours are like, they're going to do this. I'm going to see what's over there. Or,
look at that choker.
Or this fight looks like it's going poorly, so I'm going to go run into this other room.
We talked about it in another video, but it's funny enough to share again. We actually did, again, Dave was running a campaign. Our friend thought the fight we were in was going poorly. He beat out of the room, rounded the corner, went into another unexplored area, and totally got hit with a choker, strangled him to death. Nobody could hear anything. We're in another room fighting for our lives.
Yep.
Sorry. And strangled people just don't make a lot of noise.
So, we weren't going to hear a listen check on that kind of nonsense. And, well, we wound up winning the encounter and eventually going and killing the choker and looting our friend's body.
Gotta loot the bodies. Waste not, want not.
Yeah, which happens often. But now that we were way off of cleric, which happens.
Yeah, I mean, this is, just kind of part of the dynamic. So is there anything else that we wanted to touch base on clerik?
I think we didn't talk about turning undead.
Well,
raising undead and annoying your paladin spouse with them. We've talked about
with 5th edition.
but not turning.
With 5th edition, this is my only real beat point on the cleric, is they get a very limited number of turn undeads. It's like, I think it's one at first, another one at second, another one at 13th or 17th level.
But it's only between our short rests.
Right, but I mean, if you're
so in an encounter, you don't get to use them as often. You might get them more per day.
Yeah, true. If you wind up taking a short rest between every single encounter, if you're going through a serious dungeon crawl, that might not be an option. I don't. Again, you don't really, haven't done the 5e study. A long rest is your 8 hours of sleep. A short rest is, you've just done something that's pretty hard. Let's take an hour to recoup, and you can get back certain things based on your class choices. Once a day, a wizard can get a spell back. Cleric, gets one of their turns back after a short rest. The cleric's turn ability is a little bit more powerful. It's not directed in a cone, but it's more of a circle around them, and it's a little bit more powerful. It doesn't just do direct damage, but it's if you are dealing with wave after wave of undead, you're not going to have that turning engine that the 3/5 cleric could possibly do. So I'd love to see, when I actually get a chance to play a cleric in 5e, and what possible feats you might have to be able to really build up to see if you can make that churn engine. But as it stands, it's my only real beef against the 5e cleric.
Now, you like playing clerics, and you play a lot of Pathfinder.
Yes.
There's a lot of stuff you can do in Pathfinder.
Yes.
With your turns.
Yes.
That's the rumor.
It is. I'm not a rule whore, though, so I don't know all of the rules off the top of my head. I would actually have to sit there and look it up, because I just don't memorize them.
Well, and also with Pathfinder, there is a plethora of feats that also affect how your turning ability works, and there's also alternate class features as well that you can swap out. So in that regard, they've taken that mechanic and done a lot with it. Where, the 5th edition has kind of simplified it and gone back more to like a 2nd edition where, it's a lot easier to turn undead and you can turn more of them in a shot. But then again, like, you don't get to dust them the way you used to. Which I kind of laminate that a little bit, That always used to be nice when you have, like, the legions of skeletons and you're like, no dust. Now it's like, now you run away.
I kind of like that barrier of, the power of my god is so strong that you're not gonna hurt me and my friends.
You won't come near, yeah.
And it's different from the warrior that's taking the sword and crushing their bones, but both are powerful. I mean, if you're just keeping them at bay, that's also a valuable skill to have. And if you play it correctly, it's really intense.
And it can also determine what the actual goal of your mission is. I mean, not every single gaming group has missions of, walk in, slay what's in front of you, and move on. If you're just trying to get through an area, it's all you need. If you're just trying to get something and get out, it's like, okay, cleric, you stand here, you guard that door with your magical, holy symbol. I'll grab the shit and we'll go. So snatch and grabs are just as feasible in a gaming situation.
Yeah, it's about defeating the encounter. It doesn't mean you have to actually kill the thing that you're up against. There's different ways to defeat
Wait a minute, the next thing you're going to say, we're not supposed to take their stuff too.
No, you gotta take their stuff.
Okay.
That's what it's all about.
No, in a lot of our videos, we talk about, that style of play where it's, all the players seem to want to do is kick in the door, kill the monster, take their stuff.
Right.
And,
we're trying to elevate, the level of gaming to go beyond that. That style of play is just, combat, kill, monster. And, for those that enjoy it, great. I have no problem with it. I'm more of the role player. I want to have the conversation. And, I might have been that kick in the door kind of player at one point in time. And don't get me wrong, I love earning XP. I love getting the loot. I've got fond stories with piles of treasure and maniacal laughter. But I think that there's a lot to be said with being able to just role play your way through an encounter. You know, we played a game of 5e last night, and one of the players was shocked when the adversary surrendered. He was like, "What?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to kill him."
Surrender? How do you surrender?
It baffled him. You know,
Yeah,
he was really shocked.
Not every bad guy has a death wish and is just
Right.
going to fight you until they die. I mean, there's certainly so many ways that you can defeat an encounter, and a good DM won't necessarily make you kill everything you come across. You're usually... A lot of characters that I play are good characters. We don't want to kill
Right.
everything that we come across. You still get the XP. You've
Right.
defeated the encounter. And then you come up with a clever way to give people a reward that's not just, oh, I pick its pockets and take everything off of its corpse.
Right.
And maybe there's a reward for, I don't know, coming back with its ear or something and you didn't have to kill it. Or maybe you find its treasure trove, but you've got it trapped in another room. So,
as a DM, I've always tried to say, if you find a way to diplomatize or social through an encounter without actually killing, obviously the newer editions say you still get the XP because you've defeated the encounter. If there was something specific to that character, that's like, all right, well, I don't have an easy way of giving that to the players, but you can always work some kind of equal or greater reward into the plot somewhere else so that the characters are still getting their set treasure or loot for an encounter. You just have to finagle it somewhere.
Yeah.
They find it somewhere. It's offered as a reward for returning for a successful mission. However it need be done. This way the players aren't feeling like they've lost something.
yeah.
That was one of the great innovations of 3.5 or 3.x and beyond, was the fact that, oh, wait a minute, we now get rewarded for not just killing the monster. Instead of killing, you can defeat them or get around them or disarm the trap or whatever it is. But with that, I think we've completely exhausted Cleric for right now and have moved into a completely different territory. So we're going to wrap it up.
If you want to rant on our rants, go ahead and put in the comments below. Click like, subscribe.
You can find us on Facebook or nerdarchy.com. And until next time, my friends, stay